Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the second Ask the Expert of 2025. I'm Richard, the Head of Service Management here at Tiger, and with me today is Matt, as always.
Hi, everybody.
Today we're going to be focusing on mastering analytics. So there's going to be sort of two phases to this today. We're going to do a bit of back to basics. And I'm sorry, there's a bit of death by PowerPoint as we go through a little bit of understanding. Then we've got some questions come in from you guys, and we'll go through the questions. So, Matt.
Yes, so good morning, everybody. What we're going to try and do this morning is go right back to basics with analytics. On this webinar this morning, there are probably people that have used analytics quite widely, and there are probably people that have looked at the screen and probably gone, I'm not too sure about this, and maybe gone on to maybe go and use a report or a dashboard. So what we're going to try and do this morning is take everybody back to the basics, go through how it all fits together, and then what we're going to do is we're going to do some practical uses, and we're going to go through maybe some more advanced parts of analytics as we go. But for now, let's go right back to how does analytics work. So what we're going to start doing is understanding about what the technical terms mean within analytics. So we're going to start looking at dimensions and measures. So dimensions are all around things like, if you think about it as a spreadsheet, it's something that describes the columns and what's within that data, okay? So there are some very simple examples below there of a dimension. So a dimension is someone's name, their gender, and whether they're wearing glasses or not. What we then do is we use a thing called a measure. So from that, we can measure things around that. So these are numerical values. So these would be things like if we wanted to count how many people are wearing glasses, we've got a measure there that's money. So we know how much money they've got in their pocket. So we can do this to look at things, who's got the most amount of money, who's got the least amount of money, or if we add up all of the things together, we can measure all the people wearing glasses and how much money they've got in their pocket. So when we talk about this and we look in analytics, we're looking at our dimensions and our measures. When we do look into analytics, you will see that the two are clearly color-coded. So you'll have one in a darker color and one in a lighter color. So the dimensions will be in the darker color and the measures will be in a lighter color in the background of the icons as you drag them on. So how does this all work? How does this all fit together? So we've got a data set here of some of our colleagues here at Tiger. So over here, what we've done is we've put people together in segments. So what we've got is we've got over here, we have female staff members that wear glasses, female with no glasses, male with glasses, and male with no glasses. So using our dimensions, which is our parts over on the left here, we can now add these up and go, right. So if we add all of our female staff members together who wear glasses, what we can do is we can then look at measures to see what's going on here. So if we look at a measure type of max, so out of females that wear glasses, what is the biggest value for those two here? So we can see, if I look at these two here, I've got £2.23 and £4.5. So the maximum amount there is £4.5 because it's the biggest number. With the minimum, what's the smallest number in the data set? So again, it will be the £2.23. Now, if we go on to female with no glasses, you'll see, unfortunately here, Sheena's only got £1.61, but Jean's got £3.26. So you've got the minimum, which is £1.61, and the maximum, which is £3.26. So that's what the min and the maximum does. And when we come to look at these measures on the screen, these will start to make sense.
And I think when we're talking about this, first we're talking about money in people's pockets.
Yeah.
You know, for you guys, let's think about how much have they spent on phone calls, how much have they spent. So it all equates back. If you're wondering, well, why are we talking about money in pockets? It's a good way to show what the measures mean.
Yeah. So now what we want to do is we want to sum up all these people. How much money between them have they got? So again, looking at female that are wearing glasses, if we total it up, the total between the two is £6.28. So this is when we sum up all these dimensions. Okay, so if we're looking at the dimensions, we want to sum all those parts together. So if we imagine this is, say, a department, and we want to sum up how much a department's made, we can put in the dimension as the department name, and then we can add in the measure, and we can measure their total amount that they spent.
Yeah, and we'll show that within Prism as a live example.
Yeah. We're just trying to take it back so we understand what these menu options mean when we click into them. So what is the average then? So again, it will take the amounts, divide it by how many items there are to give you your average. And then from here as well, we can then count. So how many people have money in their pocket? So we can look at the people that have money in their pocket, and we can count those from here. So there are 2 in this section. There are 3 in female with no glasses. Ooh, sorry. And there are 3 males that wear glasses and 2 males that don't wear glasses. This is how we count how many of those dimensions there are in here. So we're looking at a very small data set here to understand how this works. So as we apply measures to our dimensions, we'll be able to look at the max, the min, the sum, the average, and the count. Okay?
And I think it is worth saying, and we've said this on some of our analytics sessions before, there are hundreds of dimensions and measures available within analytics. We're just trying to give a feel for something that makes it very understandable for those that perhaps have that fear of analytics.
Yeah. So let's have a look at what some dimensions that are available. So I'm not going to go through every single one on the screen. Don't worry. I'm not going to sit here for an hour and bore you with these. What we are going to do, though, is go through maybe some ones that maybe you either don't know about, or common ones that I think that people use more regularly. So, for example, calling and called digits. So this is where you're looking at things like the endpoint number or the PSTN digits that are dialed, depending on what way they work. So with calling and called digits, you've got called, which is either the number that's ringing into your business, if it's an inbound call, or calling digits. It could be the outbound number as well from here. But you'd need to have the call direction to work out whether it's the calling digits you need or the call digits. And again, we will cover those off. Another important one here is time bins. Now, not a lot of people use time bins, but I use them quite a lot, and they are quite important for looking for when you're aggregating data to hours, half hours, quarter hours, or minutes. So let's say that you've got a group, and I'll do a live demo of this in a bit. You've got a department or a group of staff members. You want to know by hour how many calls they've taken, what was their average talk time on those, and how many calls maybe they lost in those hours. Okay, using these what are called hour bins, half hour bins, or quarter hour bins, you can break down the data by using these dimensions and then measure things that are happening in those brackets. Yep. So between 10 and 11, how many calls did we take? How many calls did we lose? And what was our average talk time in that?
And of course, you can take that to the next stage as well. So you can look at the sum by individual, and then you can have an average. So if you've got a team of 10 people, it might be that they took between 5 and 50 calls each in that hour, and so there's lots and lots of things that this is important to understand.
Yeah, and I think using these hour bins, half hour bins, however you're trying to break these down, when I show you them, if you've not used them in the past, you'll go, actually, that's probably quite useful for me. One thing over here that is the collecting CDR source. So for users that have got more than one CDR input into Tiger, what you can do is you can use this thing called a collecting CDR source. And what that does is allows you to limit down to just a particular data source that you're looking for. So if you've got multiple PBXs on your network and you're only looking for one PBX, you would use the collecting CDR source. It's quite important, it's the collecting. There is a calling CDR source, a called CDR source, and a collecting. The collecting one ignores about any direction and just gives you all calls for that particular CDR source. Okay, So it's quite important that
We've
one there.
actually got a spoiler question later about multiple switches and being able to see which was involved. So that'll tie in really well with that later.
So the other ones in here really, group label, group name, similar things here. Group label is just a label for the name, but the group name, this is looking at hunt groups or ring groups, depending on what you're looking at, response groups as well. So this is where you can then look at how many calls have gone to a hunt group. So irregardless what the calling and the call digits are, how many calls went to my particular hunt group. So you can start to limit down on those. And the final two here we're going to look at is initiating and terminating reason. So why did the call come to that end point, and why did it leave the end point? Okay. So what an initiating reason is why did it come to my phone? So an example of one could be it's a normal, so it's just started ringing my phone, or
a direct dial, as it were.
Yeah, direct dial into my phone, or did someone transfer it to me? Was it diverted to my phone? Okay. Now there is a document we can share with you if you want to see this on our Get Started webpage about all of the different types of initiating and terminating reasons, but they are quite important to understand these as well, especially when you're looking for an end-to-end of a particular life of a call.
And I guess you could also, like, if you wanted to, again, look at that team, is there somebody in the team that's transferring 50% of their calls versus 10% that everyone else is doing? You know, I mean, obviously the percentages is different, but, you know, you could see they had 50 calls and they transferred 25.
Yeah. So we'll look into these in more detail as we come into the live demonstration. So what are the measures that are available? Now, in here, this one here is probably the most common one that gets used, the leg and the session count. So this allows you to then sum up how many individual legs or sessions have made or received calls. And this just allows you to give you totals of how many of these events have happened. Then you've got your talk times. Now, we put talk times and into two different sections here. So we've got talk time in seconds. Now, why have we done that? They're the same thing, right? Well, if you're going to be upstreaming this into a third-party piece of software, sometimes they can't read our minutes, seconds. So if we put it in seconds, you can take that information and then convert it easier.
Look, I think there's also, if you've got a high volume call center type environment, you might want it in seconds because your calls might be an average of 1.5 minutes, for example. So actually, I think there's pros and cons to each, and it's, you know, your business, which one's going to work better for you.
Yeah. So again, just some examples in here of what we would use. So things like base cost, etc. in here. So what we're going to now look at as well is when we go into filtering in analytics, because the point of analytics is that you can filter out the data that you're looking for. Now, as you start to filter, you can do more advanced filtering. So probably some of you have just grabbed the calling or the call digits into the filter section and typed in a number and looked for it. And that's all that you've really ever used it for. Now, you could do advanced filtering. So if you drag in, let's say, calling digits, and then you drag in another one, another dimension into filter upon, it will give what's called a Boolean in between. So you'll see there's a little and that comes up between the two dimensions. If you were to click on that, it would change it from an and to an or. So what's the difference between the two? So if I use these examples here on the screen, let me go through what an and an or and the differences. So if I'm looking for gender where they equal female and the glasses equals true, okay, this would only return.
Well, we've got two
at the bottom here, because we're saying we want it where it's female and they're wearing glasses. That would return 2.
So if we were to put that into real terms, we could say they are in a specific team.
Yep.
And they took more than 50 calls.
Yeah. We can, so in that instance, or, you know, it makes...
Obviously, you need a time period in that as well.
Yeah. or that, you know, we could say that they were answered and the ring time was greater than 10 seconds, for example. You could do that. Now, if we change the and to an or, but using exactly the same, so where they're female or they're wearing glasses, okay, so this would then return 8 records. Because what we're saying is I want all my female entries, so this will be female, 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 or people wearing glasses. So it would be then return 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you add all the sections together, this would be
you'd have
8.
your 8. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the difference between the ands and the ors. Okay. Now you can also add brackets into your filtering, or parentheses, whichever way you want to call them, which will allow you to do the same. So we could say we want it where their gender is female, or they're wearing glasses. So again, it's going to give us an 8.
Yeah.
But because we're going to add an extra one on and say, and money is greater than 3, it's only then going to return 1. So Matt, Jean, and Sally. Okay. So what we're doing in here is we're doing our filtering first here. So we're going to go and get our 8 people out here. And then we're going to filter again to go, right, well then, and we only want it where the money is greater than 3. So we'd return this one,
and is there a limit to kind of how many filters you can put in? I mean, I guess when we move it to live, let's have a look and push it a bit further. But
you can. There is no limit as such. But obviously, you know, if you try and make it too complicated, if your colleague or you know when you come back to it, maybe, or I can't remember, but you know, I've seen maybe 20 items in a filter before. Okay. So it's really how specific you want to go on your filtering. But again, this is all about the basics again. So for some of you may go, yeah, I know what an and or an or is. But for some people, you know, it's maybe, oh, okay, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize that I could do that.
No, I think it's a great example. It really allows you to put, if you're looking for something very specific, and perhaps, you know, it's easy if you know the phone number, because you can go in and run a query and say, I want loads of information about that phone number. But of course, where you don't know that, if you're trying to tie down a specific call, you could look for a call that you knew arrived in the morning, was over an hour long. Mm-hmm. The person said, it was an agent in this team. So all of a sudden you're building these filters. You might get down to 15 calls that you then need to look through and figure out, did that customer call or not? Yeah,
exactly. So using these Boolean operator precedences is what you're going to be looking for in here. The next one is a group filter. Now, group filtering allows you to filter on your data set results that you've created below. So what a group filter does is when I've got a data set at the bottom in analytics, so there's some screenshots here, what it's going to do is allow me to then filter on these data sets at the bottom here to only show me actually the ones that I'm interested in. Okay, so in this example here, in the screenshot to the right, what I've done is I've summed up all of the departments and how much they've spent. Okay. But I'm only interested when a department has spent more than £1,000 in a year. Okay, so what I can do is I can filter my results set at the bottom by using the group filter here, by saying if the sum is greater than 1,000, so when I total up all the spend for my departments in this instance here.
It could be a day, a week, a month, a year, time frame's up to you.
Yep, you can change that. That's entirely up to you. But I'm only interested when the total spend is greater than £1,000, okay? €1,000, dollars, whichever currency your system's in. And this then just allows you to then only see those departments that are spending more than, you know, you budgeted for in that respect. Because you could say, right, we give £1,000 per month to every department that they can spend. But if they start going over that, I want to see. And this is where the group filters allow you only to show what you're looking for. And again, we'll come to that when we do some live demos.
I think it's worth mentioning, and you can go back to some of our previous Ask the Experts to see a bit more, but obviously once you've built this query, you can turn it into a widget, you can then schedule that.
Yeah.
This can be delivered to you daily, weekly, monthly. So again, I mean, I think it's always worth mentioning because it might take a little while for you to get this report working exactly, this query, sorry, to work exactly the way you want it. But once it's done, it's done. And then you can schedule it and it will just deliver to you or to a colleague or to department heads or team leaders or, you know, so that's been in some of our previous sessions where we talked about that. But get in touch if you want a little bit more information if you can't find the session.
Yeah. So that's what a group filter is. And again, I will demo this when we come into the live ones. So what I just need also for you guys to understand in the webinar at the moment is what's the difference between a call and a leg or a session. Okay, so I get asked this question all the time is I need to tell my boss how many calls have come into a business. Okay, now there is a big difference in Tiger Prism between a call and a leg or a session. Okay, so a call is a singular thing, a singular fact about all of the legs that happened within the particular call that you're looking for. So in this example below, I've got in my leg and session, I've got 4 legs. Okay, that is an equation of one call. So that's a singular call that came into the business, and then there were 4 legs. So if your boss is asking, well, how many physical calls came into the business, you'd be looking at the call section. If they were looking at then the individuals and you want to see, well, how are my individuals working within the business, then you would use the legs and the sessions, because it could be that you want to know how long each individual agent was on the call, for example. So a call is a singular fact. It will give you one item. No, even if there's 1,000 legs beyond it, it would still be one thing. Whereas the calls and legs, you could have, you know, 1,000 legs on that particular call. So when someone's asking you that question of, well, how many calls did we get? This is where it becomes, you know, the question you need to ask back, is it, do you just want what the customer experience? So the customer will make one call, they'll dial the main number and they'll get through. So that to them, that's one call. But to you, it could be that they spoke to reception, they went on to support, they went on to sales, they then went into, say, customer attention. So that's
call bouncing, basically.
Call bouncing, yeah. So that's now 4 legs. So what does the manager want to measure? The customer's one call that they made in, or your business's 4 legs into the system?
Yeah, and I think that's important because when you think about your business, every contact has a cost. So, you know, is it that your IVR's not working right? People are choosing the wrong option. Is it not clear enough for them? So I think that there's a lot you can actually do with that call leg information if you put your mind to it.
Yeah. So again, I will demo the difference between the two so it will make sense. So let's put this into practice. So let's go and look in analytics. Let's take what we've just learned from this.
So just while you're loading that up, Matt, I'll just remind everyone, obviously, if you've got any questions you want to ask, either following on from what we've talked about there or as we're going through the live demo here, then please do pop them in the chat and I'll pick it up. Just another reminder as well, at the end, you will get a survey link when you exit WebEx. The most important thing for me in that survey link, obviously tell us how wonderful and how great the session was, but if there's anything you do want to see in future Ask the Expert sessions, then please do leave it in the feedback. We try to tailor these to meet the requirements of you as our customer. So yeah, please do leave that feedback for us and let us know what you'd like to see next.
Okay, so we're going to go and look in the telephony analytics. It may be that if you're using Teams, you may want to come into Teams over here as well, but we'll start with the telephony analytics.
Should we link this to some of the questions we've actually had in, Matt, and use those as kind of the demo?
Yeah, we can do.
So we had a question in from one of our NHS customers. So it's how to manage hunt groups for reporting and also IVRs, system CUC system call handlers. As we often don't see the CDR data where it ends up once it's gone through hunt, pilot, hunt list, line group. So this is exactly sort of what you're talking about, this call leg journey. So I think it's it ties in nicely with the last example.
Perfect. So because that's what you're looking for is the legs, you're looking for the hops and jumps in between. You would go into the legs and not into the calls in this example, although we will come back to that here, and we'll go into legs. Now, 2 bits of advice with analytics. In the top left-hand corner, you've got these 3 little lines. You can click this and it will shrink it on the side here. There is also a little triangle that sits here on the right-hand side. If you want some more real estate on the screen, you can click on this and it will expand the screen out, so give you a bit more of a bigger screen. To bring it back in, you can click it and it will come back in from here. So to add columns into analytics, you can come up to the top here. You can click in the blank space here and you can start typing what you're looking for. So I'll be interested in looking at groups, okay? Now, as I type the word group, I'll get a list of all the columns that are available. And we spoke about it in the example in the PowerPoint, group label. And as I click on this, it will then move on to the next one. I can type again, and I can then put in here, say, group name, okay? So in this example that was asked from the NHS customer, group labels and group names are what we'll be looking for here. So these are the hunt groups that we'll be looking for, okay?
And actually, you've got lots of other fields left there still, Matt.
Yeah.
Do we need to leave them in there?
We'll leave them in there for this moment in time. Some of them you can remove. So, you know, currency code's probably not that important. So to remove a column, you just simply click on it here. Now, if you're not sure what the column's called, over on the right-hand side, we've got our dimensions. So this is what we were talking about before, these darker coloured sections here. We've got our measures, which are our lighter colours here. You can go through these menu options and come and look at them. So maybe you can say, oh, actually, I want all of my access codes. I want all of my DNIS digits. And what you can do is you can then just drag and drop those from the right to the left over here to run this, okay? Once you've selected all your columns that you want to appear in the window at the bottom here, okay, because this is what happened, they will appear in here. You can then choose your tree. So if you've got more than one tree, you can choose your tree from here. We're just going to stick with our departments tree. We can look at quick dates or specific dates, you choose. We'll just quit with quick dates, and let's go with last month, okay?
And obviously, where you've talked about the tree there, that's our directory.
That is our directory. That's where we get all
I know we're going to
information.
cover that in our next Ask the Expert. We're going to do some work around directories and why they're important.
Yeah, good, useful information. As you know, having your directory up to date is really useful, especially when you're looking at this type of data. Getting the correct names and departments, etc., is really useful. So we've added on these extra columns here now, these group label, group names, and DNIS digits. Now, if I want to look for all my groups, I can then click on these items here, and I will be able to then see all of my hunt groups that the calls have gone into. Okay, so these are my hunt groups over here, group 8000. But you'll see I'm getting all the ones that have no groups in them. So what I want to be able to do now is filter my data out, because I don't want to see all the ones that don't have any groups on them. So what I do...
So those are direct calls?
They're direct calls or calls that haven't gone through a group in this instance. So what I want to do is take my group name and I want to drag it into my filter here, okay? And in here it will say that the group is not filtered. So what you need to do is with the left mouse button, click on this, and it will give you a set of options then that you can do. So you can say it contains a value, so it contains 8000, or it equals 8000, or is not 8000, so it doesn't contain, or does not equal 8000. You can even say it begins with 8, for example, or ends with 00. There's this is in. So what does is in mean? Is in means that you can put a comma separated value in here. And what this will mean is it will go and look for anything that's 8000, 8001, and 8002. Okay, so it is in this data set. So it's either that number, followed by a comma, followed by the next number, followed by a comma, followed by the next number.
So the comma we should think about as ors.
Ors,
in the context of our conversation today.
Yeah. So you can say then not in this list or is blank. Now, for our example, I just want to make this really simple. Go and get me all calls that went into my hunt group 8,000. Okay. So if I put in that for last month and return that, I'll get a data set row of 9 over here. So it will give me now just my 9 calls that have gone into that hunt group. From here, I've got multiple options that I can do. So I can then click on the burger button over here on the left-hand side to see more information about that call. So for every call, or every call leg, as we are in here, by clicking on the burger button, what it will do is bring up the call as a whole and show me all the details that's happened on that call. So there was only one leg in this here, so it gives me a textual description of what happened on that call. It started at 5:45, it ended at 10:56, sorry. There were 2 people involved for 1 minute and 20 seconds, and there was no cost involved, okay? I can then start to see more information. So again, I looked at these initiating and terminating reasons we talked about earlier. So it's a normal and a normal. The call direction was internal. And if you really want to, you could really drill in and see more information about this, including things like the groups it went through, it was a hunt group, etc. So
obviously some of these fields are limited by the information we're provided from the switch. You know, if you've got a Cisco CECM, we get pretty much all of this information. Perhaps a Mitel, Panasonic, we don't get all of this information.
Correct. Yeah, so it depends on the CDR source, and again, as well with even Microsoft Teams, if you're looking for, say, hunt group information, it's not called hunt groups, they're called call queues, and there is a specific analytics for call queues. Now, it works in the same way as what we're looking at here. Everything's the same. You can click on it. It will show you the journey of the call in exactly the same way. The only difference being is that the fields may slightly differ with the names, and that's pretty much all the differences between the two. But the functionality, everything I'm showing you here, is exactly the same. So in this here, filtering on the groups, that's how you do it. And that will then return your data set here. Now, I've got my data set here with all of my data here. What am I trying to achieve from it? So maybe I want to count how many calls have gone into that group. So what I can do is let me then remove all the columns I don't want to see. So let's start with our 2, which is our group label and our group name. Let's add in talk time over here and talk time again. There'll be a reason behind this in a second. And I'm going to add a very important field, which is our leg count, okay? This leg count will be very important in a second, and I'll explain why when we go through and look at this. So I'm going to run this again, and it's going to return my 9 rows at the bottom here. Now,
and that's because we've not changed the filter.
Yeah, this because we've not done anything.
Different columns, but the filter's the same.
Yeah, so we've got the same filter here, and we've got 9 rows of information. Now, it doesn't really help me very much understand what my hunt group's done, okay? If I've got 10,000 calls in here, that's not really that useful. Now, we talked about it in the PowerPoint about these measures and the fact that you can put in things like maximum, the minimums, averages, sums. So how do we do this? Well, as I said, the lighter color ones here, when I now click on them in my columns with my left mouse button, I'm now getting these options that become available to me. So I can now go, right, well, what was my longest talk time? Okay, so I'm going to look at my maximum. What was my biggest talk time to that hunt group? And what I'm looking for is, my average talk time as well. So I can come into the next one and click on average. But what I'm really interested in is knowing, I want to count how many times something happened on that hunt group. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count how many rows that we get back. So by clicking on count here, it will then count how many times there's one of those options. So if I then run that, what it's now doing is it's now giving me the group label, and this may be different. So the group label may come up and say, I don't know, Tiger main hunt group, okay? So this is the label in the network, the hunt group number, the longest call. So what was our longest call that went to that hunt group? So that was 1 minute and 30 seconds. What was our average talk time during that? So it's 24 seconds. And there were 9 calls that went to that.
Okay, bridge the data, still 9.
Yeah, still 9, and it's there. Now, one of the things that we talked about, and just to dive in a little bit deeper using what we've got here, is what I'm actually then interested in is to know that breakdown by hour or half hour or quarter hours. So when I talked about these bins, so if I type the word bin in here, what it will do is allow me to break down by maybe half hour, by minute, or by quarter hours. So if I add in an hour bin, I'll put that to the front here just to make it nice and easy. You can do this, it's just simple drag and drop, okay? If I now put in the hour bin here.
Saves you doing it before you move it to Excel, yeah?
Yeah. What it's now going to do is show me what hour bin that those calls are made. So all those calls, those 9 calls, were made between 10 and 10:59. Now, it could be that I want it by quarter hour bins, right? So I can add, again, I'll type in the word bin, and I'll add in my quarter hour bins here, drag it to the front again, and it will then break it down by quarter hours for me. Okay, so I can see that between 10:15 and 10:30, I had 1 call. And there was a maximum of 1 minute 30, an average of 1 minute 30. But then between 10:30 and 10:59, there was 1. And then between 10:45 and 10:59, there was 7. And my longest call in that 15-minute period was 1 minute and 20 seconds, with an average of 18 seconds. So again, using these bins really help us understand, what's going on with that data within.
And I think when you think about staffing levels, for example, this is where this works really well, particularly with the hourly one. It might be that you identify, well, actually, we're really busy between 8 and 9. We need to bring some more people in early.
Yeah.
Or equally, it might be like us. I mean, I know we've done it by fit, but 10 to 11, we seem to be really busy. So, yeah. The question just come in, Matt, just while we're on this. Can you also do a bin by days of the week?
Yes, so there are. So there are 2 things. There are week is a weekend and is a weekday, okay, and the weekday number. So what you can do, the weekday number is 1 is Sunday, 7 is Saturday. So that gives you the numerical number. And then weekday is the name, so it's Saturday, Sunday. So if I add that in just as an example, because it will be fine. So let's put it at the beginning. It will give you it's a Saturday, a Thursday, etc. as well in here, and you can filter on this as well. So if you say I want to see all my calls on a weekend, for example, I can say, is it a weekend? So I've got a Saturday and a Thursday there. I could drag down my is weekend. At the moment, because it's set as false, because I haven't ticked this little box here, okay, it will return my 2 rows at the bottom, the 2 Thursdays. If I tick the box to say, right, I'm only interested in weekends, so I've made it true now.
Looking for out of hours.
Out of hours,
for example. You might not work Saturdays and Sundays. So
it's flipped it on its head there. So you can see, so yes, in that question, you can do weekends, weekdays, you can add the names, or if you're interested in the number, the day number, you can also do that as well.
So that's not quite a bin in the same way. That's just a display field in essence.
Yeah. So if you took out the quarter hour, though, you'd be able to take that. And when you export it by clicking on the export button up here and take it into Excel, maybe you can do all sorts of pivot tables, etc. With that data. But yes, you can add all that information into this data set.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So one thing we did talk about as well on the PowerPoint was this group filters. So what I really want to do is just quickly cover this off, and then we'll cover through the.
Yeah, we've got a few more questions we could run through that, really good questions that relate to what we were talking about in the PowerPoint.
Yeah, so if we look at the group filters here, what we can do is we are only interested in calls where the total is maybe over 5. Okay, so what I can do is I can drag my item from the top into my group filters and say, right, in here, I'm only interested where the sum of calls is greater than or is less than or is equal to whatever you want from here.
Less than's an interesting one. You could say it's less than 1, for example. You could pull up all your hunt groups that aren't receiving any calls. Oh, well, sorry, less than 5.
Less than 5.
Hunt groups that really aren't being utilised very much.
Yeah, so it would be there. You could say, right, I want to look for the ones that, yeah, maybe aren't being called into as much. So in this instance here, though, we'll say, look, we're only interested where the call sum is greater than 5. Or you could say, I'm interested where the average talk time you see, for example. So I could say where the average talk time is greater than maybe 10 seconds. Okay, so go and get me all of my result sets below where my average talk time is greater than 10 seconds. And again, so that's just filtering on my data set below. So not doing any extra filtering. It's just filtering on the rows that are on the bottom, allowing me then just to take out the data that I need.
Again, I think to the point, a lot of people might build a query, not realizing that these extra filters are there.
Correct.
Export it, end up doing these filters in Excel before they send it on to a manager or the switchboard operator, or do it in Prism, I guess, is the key, and then turn it into a widget.
Yep. Save
schedule it to run.
Or so you can save it, schedule it to run, and when you save it, then you can save it, just give it a name. You can save it to a widget group.
Yeah.
Then you can use the security to secure that. So you can say only these users can see these widgets.
Yeah, because you may need it once a day, you may need it once a month, you don't know. So ad hoc rather than scheduled.
Yeah. So we can save these widgets, give it a name, and they'll become available on the left-hand side. And I'll come to that in a second. So the final part here is our filtering, and we talked about this before about adding our parentheses or brackets. And again, to add a bracket, unfortunately, you just have to type them in. Okay, so you just type in the bracket, and then you can drag this in here. So what we can say is we're only interested where the group name is that, and as you drag another one in here, it comes up with the and option in here. Okay. And again, you just click on this to change it from an and to an or. So you can say I want the group name to be 8,000, or the group label, which is the main hunt group number. Okay. And then once you drag a final one in, you can then also say and talk time or talk time is greater than 1 second, for example. Okay, so this is then looking at the hunt group, and again at the top here there's a little I button, and if you're not sure what you're filtering on, because you put lots of information in, there's a bit of advice. If you click on this little hover over this I button, it will tell you exactly what your filter is going to do. Okay, so, and this is the same for the group filter. Again, it's just a useful tip, especially if you've got lots in your filter. So if I now run that, I should get roughly the same information back. There you go. So I get my 9 calls back. So I've just filtered it in a slightly different way, but I'm getting the same data set. So that's back.
I think that's really good. I mean, look, it shows the different ways that people want to kind of see and utilize the information, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Look, some of these we've sort of touched on, but we've got a couple of other questions I'd love to get through today as well, which are very relevant. So how can I see all about a call, start, end, and everything in between? So I think this is the burger button that we talked about.
So let's do it on the calls just so we can see what the difference is. So if I go into my calls, so again, this is just a singular thing. So there's no numbers or anything else in here. Okay. You can do things like, though, if you're just looking for, did the call get answered? So there is at any point, was that call answered? Okay, that's quite important to you. So this is about if you've got 10 legs and none of them were answered, you've got the is answered one, which is in here as well. Or did it get transferred externally? So you could have was it sent external from your network as well? So there are.
And that would pick up like diverts to mobiles, for example, as well. So.
Yeah, or it could be to another PBX as well. So if it got diverted from there. So yeah, to see end to end on here. So if I go and pick one here, so this tells me how many legs there were. Let's go and go for a bit of a longer period. Let's go for this year, for example. Right, so this one has 12 legs. So this has 12 hops on the call. So if I then click on this burger button here, you'll be able to see the 12 legs. So it came into 2000. Okay, you'll see here the initiating reason is normal. So that means it just ran. But it was terminated by redirecting. So it redirected off to here. So the initial term is a redirect. Then it was picked up. They connected. And then they transferred it. Okay, and then they transferred it over to 0 and so on and so forth through the whole journey of that particular call.
And obviously, for each of these legs, you've got the buttons down the left still.
Yep,
you click on the greater detail and back to the point. I mean, like you've got quality there, for example. You know, if your Switch or Teams is providing it, you can see different people, different qualities, and it will all be specific to the call, correct?
Correct.
To the leg.
To the leg,
sorry,
yeah.
Correct.
So the call is just this section at the top. The legs are done on clicking on the individual parts of that leg.
Okay, all right. A question that's come in, actually, a good question. So where you have multiple switches linked together,
yeah,
is there any way of generating a report where external incoming is strictly a call that originated from the PSTN?
Yes, so there are ways of doing this. So the best way of doing it is by looking at your, so if you're looking for inbound calls, so using your call legs here, you would be looking at your calling devices or calling channel group numbers, okay?
Yeah, so incoming that originated from the PSTN.
Yeah,
we're looking at.
So unfortunately, you probably need to know either your channel group numbers that are PSTN enabled, so on your network, if you know what they are. So if you've got your calling device name, so this will be the trunk name if you've got a trunk name, okay, for it, or it would be the calling channel group number or the channel group name, and these will be the numerical values that Tiger gives them or the numerical values that your switch is. So for example, if you've got an ISDX, it could be channel group 100, for example. And what you can do is you can filter on these by dragging them in here, clicking on here, and say there is in, and you can say, right, channel group 100, channel group 121, channel group 123, channel group 120, 56, for example. They're all my PSTN numbers, and it would only show you calls that come through those channel groups.
So I think what would do, Robert, if you know your channel groups and things like that, drop me or Matt an email. We'll happily get one of the guys to run through some of this with you and help you get some of these set up, because clearly it's something you want to do. Happy to support it. All right. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, another question has come in. Is there any? Okay, so this is from Alan. So, is there any way to set up a report to show if quads dropped or multiple call failure on MS Teams? Now, we've touched on this before, actually, haven't we? Yes is the answer.
Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll quickly, only because for a second here to show you. So the way that you'll be looking at is on the PSTN direct routing insights here. On your PSTN legs, okay, there are two fields that you'll be looking at, which is the CDR. Bear with me a second, it's off the top of my head. Let me grab one. I will this month.
Find an example.
Find an example. So there are two fields. So you've got the ISDN termination calls value and the SIP termination calls values. Okay. So these are the two outcomes that you get. Now you'd have to Google what these are because there are lots. But if you're getting lots of things like 404s etc. This is where they are. So you could create an analytic. So let's just do one quickly. So you could say PSTN, sorry, cause value. So call termination and SIP termination cause values, and let's add in leg count. So this is a good example. Leg count. Let's count how many of these we've had.
I think what was good there though, Matt, actually is, and it's worth for our audience to know that, you clicked on the burger button, went in and identified what the field might be.
Yeah.
That's worth everyone just sort of recognising what's happened there.
So on ours, we haven't had any failures, but we would then have the cause value and the SIP termination cause values here, and then the count. Then you can add in things like date. So if you're running it over a year, you could add in date, and then you could even go down to your hour bins again to then see, you know, when that's happening. Yeah. Okay, so that then gives you a breakdown by day and by hour, how many failures you had on there. And this is when we would go, right, I would then filter and say I want everything that's not 0, for example, because 0 is good.
Top of them out, yeah.
Or you go, right, I'm only interested when this happens. So when the count of the legs, so I would say the count of the legs is greater than 5. So if I get more than 5 404s, for example, which is, you know, the device is not found, I want to know about that. So I could say on the 9th of January, between 1 and 1 there, we had 35 issues, for example, if that was a 404.
Okay. And obviously we've gone into teams. This is teams we're looking at.
This is teams that we're looking at. So yeah.
I think the challenge with this is, yes, it can all be done. We do actually get that information from Microsoft. But as you can see, it's identifying the right fields. And look, Alan, if you want some more help with that, again, as my last offer, give us a shout. We'll happily get one of the guys to spend a little bit of time with you. It might even be Matt. We'll get one of the guys to spend a little bit of time with you and go through it. And one more question that's come in.
Yep.
So if you're trying to search for a few extensions using calling digits or call digits, is there a way of searching these using something similar to is in instead of clicking on the plus button to enter the next extension?
So yes, there's a very good question, and actually something that really, you know, is really useful in here. So I'm just going to quickly go back to the standard thing here. So there are 2 ways of doing this. So if I'm looking for, let's say, called digits, and I click on this, so you're talking about this plus button here, okay? Now, when you add in a number, so in here, what you've got is things called wildcards, okay? So at the bottom here, you've got a wildcard. So % means anything. So for example, if I'm looking for anything that contains 7771, for example, in here, you can click on that and it will look for any digits that contain 7771.
And I know you don't need a % at the end. This isn't like you know, it's quotes. This is just a...
This is contained, so anything contains. Now, if you're looking for extension ranges, for example, calls to a particular extension, and they're 1, 2, 3, and then you want 0 to 9 at the end, or 0 to 6, you can use the square brackets, which is what these are here, and you can use sort of what we call regular expressions. So what I could say is then I want in between the square brackets 4 to 8. So that would then look for extension 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, 1, 2, 3, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 1, 2, 3, 8. Okay, so that will look for those sort of extension numbers there. So what we're saying is it starts with 1, 2, 3, then it's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so using your wildcards here, you can use what's called regular expressions to try and make this a bit easier.
And just show us again, Matt, how have you brought that wildcard
so you just hover over the little information button in the bottom left and it will tell you all about it. Okay, and for those that don't know too much about regular expressions, there is a lot on the internet about it, but for what you're looking for, simple searches like that are the best ways of doing it. Other than that, there is no easier way of doing this. Unfortunately, you just have to plus and plus and plus
Yeah.
and.
But I think to your point, I mean, I think when we look at the question, it probably is a specific set of extensions.
Yeah.
So can you put the commas in here as well and kind of?
No, but what you
You
could.
can do that in the is in.
Yeah, only in the in the call digits. If it's for a particular set of departments, for example, we have these things called calling tree path. Okay, and I'll show you what a calling tree path is. A called tree path. Again, very useful bits of information. And you also have the calling levels as well. So what I'm going to do is add in calling level 2 and called level 2. Now, what these levels do is they equate to the levels in your directory. Okay, so level 1 will always be your parent company, and then you'll have level 2, level 3, depending where you are in the tree. So if I run that now, what you'll see is over on the right-hand side, you'll have the tree path, which is Tiger, then service management, Tiger, then directors, and then just the bit here. So if I'm looking for, say, a group of extension numbers, rather than typing in all the extension numbers, let's go, right, I want to see all my outbound calls, calling tree path, outbound calls to service, for example. So I can type in the word service. What that will do is then filter all of my calls out to only show the ones for service management, or I could have done it on calling level 2 as well. So again, just useful fields that help you filter out the information.
Yeah.
So rather than manually typing in all the extensions as you go, just look for maybe the the department names, etc. as well.
I'm going to ask one last quick question. I'm conscious of the time. We do need to close, but one of our reports, we had a lot of call outcomes of unattainable. What does that mean?
So
figured this would be a quick one, so we'll squeeze it in.
Unobtainable means that that it couldn't get dial tone to make the call out. So it was trying to make a call via the PSTN. There was no way that the call could leave, therefore it becomes unobtainable to the user. So they got a beep, beep, beep sound when they made the call. So that's the user experience. You can turn on things again if you are in here, the ISDN, depending on what phone system you've got, it may give you the SIP termination cause value or the call termination cause value as well. Again, it depends on what phone system you've got, and it may give you more information about those what particularly happened and why they got that, because there are many reasons behind it. Hopefully those values should give you more information about what happened.
Okay, thank you very much. So last question, which I'm just going to cover anyway. So Karen, thank you, that's perfect timing. Where can I watch previous webinars? So we've got tiger.io/get-started. If you go to there, oh look,
There you
go. There's lots of actually information on here. There's user guides, there's all sorts of things, but we also have our Ask the Expert links in here for our previous sessions there. So you can go in and access them there. But yeah, Get Started is a really good source of information. We keep it up to date. We're actually updating all of our manuals at the moment. We are we add widgets every couple of widgets every month. If there's widgets you want, ask us. We'll add them for you. But yeah, look, I'm sorry, we've overrun today, so that's going to be it for today. But as I said, when you exit, we ask to leave feedback. If you've got things that you'd love to see in the next Ask the Experts, then please do put it in the feedback, and we'll be more than happy to incorporate for you.
Yeah.
But for now, thank you very much, everyone. Have a great week.
Bye.